Hello everybody, thanks for joining. I'm Dave McGrail from Xalient. I'm joined here today by Jaye Tillson from HPE Networking.
It's great to be here again, thank you.
Thanks, Jay. So you are fresh off the plane from Black Hat. What was that like?
Busy as always. I'm still suffering a little bit from jet lag. I always get it coming back home. It was really busy. I flew in on Saturday. I spent some time on Sunday. I want to say chilling out, but I didn't. I spent time preparing. We then had an analyst summit that we attended, a few of us, and then full steam ahead into Black Hat for Wednesday and Thursday. It was very, very busy, probably busier than I've seen it for a number of years. I'd love to see the stats on how many people attended. I spent time at our booth. I had some sessions on the booth, customer and partner conversations, some analyst briefings, a little bit of time to walk around the show floor and have a look specifically around the AI kind of area and the startup area.
Yeah.
And then all the events in the evenings as well, all of the networking. So I found it really exciting.
Presumably plenty talk of AI, as there has been at a lot of the events this year so far.
Yeah, but I think I'm seeing a change when it comes to AI. AI's been bandied about for a number of years. I think a lot of the vendors kind of put AI on their booths at Black Hat and RSA last year, but it felt like there was no foundation for it. Right, this year it was very different. It was very specific around what they were doing with AI.
Okay.
I went and spoke to a number of vendors and really got into the details of what they were doing, and this year they could explain it to me what they were doing.
Okay.
So I think it's no longer just a buzzword. I think there is foundation behind it, and the conversations were much more in depth and much more technical.
Bit more real.
Yeah.
And I guess there's been a bit of a shift from there being a bit of machine learning in the background to being kind of generative AI that is a bit more front and center for the not necessarily for the end user experience, but maybe for the people driving the technology. There's more of an interface for them from an AI perspective.
Yeah, I think people have realised the power that AI can bring. Like a lot of technology, we've both worked in technology for a while. When a technology comes along, there's all that hype around it. What's it going to mean? Generally, the kind of people that work in IT or security like the new shiny lights and new toys, so we go off and do cool stuff and play around with it.
Yeah.
In the background, the attackers are monetizing those new technologies.
Yeah.
And then I think it shifts a little bit, and the vendors out there start to realize that they need to resolve business issues with these forms of technology,
yeah.
AI being no different.
Yeah.
And then there starts to be more conversations around what could this actually do to help people. And
yeah.
I think we're kind of at that point now.
Okay, because there are kind of three angles there, aren't there? As a security, in the security space, there's the how can we leverage AI to help improve our security posture?
Yep.
There's how can we protect you from AI-based threats? And then there's how can we help move the business forward leveraging AI as part of the technology, right?
Yeah, and I think for a long time there was no real regulation around AI. And I mean the likes of ChatGPT, etc., all the other things, and therefore it was available to people within companies to just go off and do it.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had conversations where people have been putting information in that maybe shouldn't have been putting in.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of protection around that now. There's more governance around AI. So that element is shifting.
Yeah.
We as a vendor are doing stuff around AI as well. We did announce our SASE Copilot, which I think is worth people listening, looking up and having a bit more detailed investigation into. But vendors, more and more vendors are starting to realize that there is a lot of data that they collect, and therefore being able to go through that data as a human is very difficult. So the power of bringing AI into that, I think, is a positive thing. I'm still a little bit nervous around what the attackers can possibly do with AI.
Yeah.
That makes me nervous because they're definitely monetizing it. So we do need to bring in regulation and control around it, and education as well.
Yeah, and I think equally there's a risk that if vendors haven't implemented AI very well within the platforms, then that could potentially be weaponized as well.
Yeah.
So there's some challenge around that. So we kind of touched on your SASE co-pilot there. So what's the SASE market doing at the moment, and from an AI perspective within HP networking?
The SASE market in general is gaining traction. It certainly is something more people are aware of.
Yeah.
I want to say 2-3 years ago, I could say to people, have you heard of SASE? They'd never heard of it. Then there started to be that realization of what it is, what it means.
Yeah.
Then that shifted into how can this help us as a business?
Yeah.
And now we're talking about single vendor, multi-vendor. And I think the more and more people I speak to, the market in general, not just SASE, is moving towards consolidation.
Yeah.
It's moving towards reducing complexity. It's moving towards more simple solutions. There are statistics out there that say that the average CISO or CIO is managing 50 plus different applications, and they want less. And I agree with that. I think that if you can simplify your environment, you get greater visibility, you get greater control, and therefore that is pushing all the market.
Yeah.
And SASE is one of those elements where you can make it out of multiple vendors, but that can be complex. And because of that need for simplicity, people are going towards single vendor.
It's a good point. I think the more integration you've got to do, ultimately you can end up with overlap, and that's almost as bad as gaps, because there's an assumption that it's happening in both places. Maybe it's happening in neither. So that's interesting from a convergence perspective. And HP networking, you're starting to talk about universal zero trust.
Universal ZTNA.
That's it.
Yes. So universal ZTNA is really a Gartner term. Some of the other analyst companies are calling it something slightly different. But fundamentally, it's taken ZTNA, which has become really synonymous with remote access, granular remote access, kind of the future of remote access. It's taken that idea of connecting users just to the applications or services they require and bringing it on-prem.
Yeah.
So like I said, ZTNA is really synonymous with remote access, but we are living now in a hybrid world. So let's say, for instance, I'm working at home a few days a week. I use my ZTNA tool, and then I go and work in an office. Historically, you would then have a different security profile, different solution.
Different way of working.
Yeah, completely different solutions, probably less granular access because we trusted our networks a lot more. So maybe you could go everywhere on the network. That's still very popular today.
Yeah.
People are starting to realize that if you've got the granular capabilities when you're remote, you really want that same granular capabilities on-prem.
Yeah.
And you really, because of the talk we just had around simplicity and reducing complexity, they want that from the same tool as well. So a single policy should be utilized no matter where somebody is. So whether I'm working remotely in a hotel, at home, on a plane, wherever it may be, or whether I come on our network internally, I should have one single policy and one layer of visibility for IT and security.
And the visibility is a really important thing, as is the user experience. Ultimately, if you've got a unified experience, whether you're sitting in a coffee shop or whether you're in the office, that's great from a user experience, because I don't need to, the technology disappears into the background, which is what good technology should do. And you've removed a lot of the friction, and you're letting people get on with the job.
Yeah, and I mean, I worked in IT a long time, and quite often we actually forget about the users. Yeah. A lot of us are in IT because we love technology. We don't necessarily remember that the users exist, but that frictionless kind of movement is critical. It used to be not that long ago that most of the time people were in an office. So they would come in an office, they were familiar with it, they would plug their machine in, maybe into a docking station, maybe just a monitor, whatever it might be. They got used to that. The transition between doing that in an office and doing it at home became very difficult. My partner, she really struggled with what tools do I use when I'm at home versus what tools do I use when I'm in an office? Do I need my VPN connectivity? Do I need to do MFA? How do I connect? And then going somewhere else, what do I do here? So we really, that's really what Universal ZTNA does. It makes it seamless for the users and gives greater visibility for IT and security staff.
Yeah.
We lost that when people transitioned into this hybrid world. We had a lot of tools that would help us out on-prem, would help us understand what people are doing, help protect them. There were many different tools. We had all kinds of different tools, but we had many of them that gave that visibility. Now when people are, and not only people, but their devices, data have moved outside, you need to be able to look in a single place and see what is happening.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about AI. When you start to consider having all that data, having it in a single place, AI brings power into being able to search through it at such an alarming rate that humans couldn't do. So being able to see user analytics and be able to look at trending and all of those things.
And there's value in that beyond the security landscape though as well, because then when you can start to see the applications that people are interacting with, and when you start to be able to look at, what infrastructure have I got to support that. And I think that's where I kind of wanted to take some of this is, there's a business case beyond security for some of this stuff, isn't there? Because the reality is you could look at a VPN replacement and say, maybe I'm sweating the asset of a hardware firewall in a data center, and I'm trying to get the most out of that. And so the business case for replacing that with this modern paradigm of ZTNA is potentially not the easiest of business cases. I've got a firewall and it's working. It's working for now because nobody's specifically targeted you, and that might be why you haven't had an incident yet. But beyond that, there's business value in doing some of this stuff, isn't there? Yeah,
I mean, if we take the risks of legacy VPN out of the situation, we recently did a number of reports. We did an SASE adoption report and a VPN exposure report that we can share. One of the biggest issues with legacy VPN is user experience.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into too much technical detail, but VPNs generally send all traffic back to an office to come back to where you started. So most people spend a lot of their time using tools that are in the cloud, whether that be conference solutions or whether it be file storage or whatever it may be. Legacy VPNs send all of your connectivity on-prem to come back. That's latency, that's slow performance, that affects users. And then VPNs are just clunky.
Yeah.
And always have been, but there was no real alternative. I came from a manufacturing background. We were a highly acquisitional company. I would be managing 4+ different VPN solutions. And therefore users found it complex.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, and maybe air some of our internal dirty laundry. When we were acquired by HPE had 4 VPNs. And that was because they were also highly acquisitional. I was given a laptop. I was told for certain things, use this VPN. For other things, use this VPN. For other things, use this VPN. That's complicated.
Yeah.
That's complicated from an IT and security management point of view, visibility point of view, protection point of view, all those security things we've talked about. But it's also really difficult internally. Yeah. We have now moved to our own solution. Some people say we're eating our own dog food. I would never truly choose to eat dog food.
Drinking your own champagne.
I would much prefer to say drinking our own champagne. To go back slightly to when I was at my old company, we actually published a Excel spreadsheet that told people what VPN they needed to use to access what service or application.
Yeah.
The irony was it was on our intranet that you needed a VPN to get to. So definitely one of the biggest issues with legacy VPNs outside of security is the complexity and the performance, and users are beginning to realize with this hybrid work that they want simple.
Yeah.
They want to just be able to connect wherever they are to what they need to do their day jobs, and that is a real good business case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and perhaps the extension of that is by kind of abstracting that connectivity away from the network and really focusing on the device and connecting it to the resource they're trying to reach. it's kind of a natural enabler for things like bring your own device. Some people call it bring your own disaster, but I think there's that side of it. But once you start to enable people beyond the corporate device, then we can really start to think about how we're securing third-party connectivity. We know that supply chain attacks are huge, and often people will try and leverage a supply chain to be able to attack a business. So the way that your third parties are connected into you can be really important, and this technology can help with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's why Axis was founded. So Axis Security, which was acquired by HPE, was founded to fix that specific problem. Third party and contractor, and therefore also BYOD.
Yeah.
Giving access to internal services from machines that you don't want to deploy an agent on. And you don't want to deploy an agent because they're not yours.
Yeah.
You can't patch them, you can't manage them, you can't control them. If you put a VPN agent on a device, it becomes an extension of your network.
Yeah.
And therefore, if that device is compromised, that compromise goes through that dark VPN tunnel onto your network, and generally, and I know it's not always the case, but generally east-west kind of movement is possible through that tunnel. That machine gets an IP address.
Yeah.
And that's really why Axis was invented, to resolve that issue, and to give agentless access to things like VNC, Git, database, all those kind of things without an agent. And that's still a very important need today. That's where a lot of our customers start their journey. And because of the rise of BYOD, that solution works for those use cases as well.
Yeah.
So being able to sit with a business, I in the role that I do, I don't talk technology. I don't generally, I mean I can, but I don't get into all the weeds of that stuff. I generally sit and talk about what is your business requirement. Do you have third parties? Do you have contractors? Yeah. Are you a BYOD house? Are you interested in becoming more efficient? Are you, yes, the security element is part of it, conversations with the CISOs, etc. But if you're having a conversation with the ops director or someone in that area, the COO, whoever it may be, they still, unfortunately, see IT and security as a cost center.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't believe that should be the case.
No.
It should be an enabler.
So let's take an example of that. And kind of what comes as a surprise, we're going to talk about identity and SASE to an extent. There's clearly, identity is part of the wider zero trust story is huge. But if we go back to that kind of agentless connectivity that we were talking about, and then we start to think about identity, there's a huge story there around being able to onboard people quickly, perhaps be able to accelerate M&A.
Yeah.
And those kind of initiatives, and really that's a use case where the technology becomes that business enabler. So we come back to that business case of potentially doing a VPN replacement, because merging two companies, typically you'd have spent 6 months trying to merge the networks and harmonize IP addresses, and it's an IT nightmare. To actually on day one or day two, we can give the acquired company, we can give them access to some of our resources in a safe way without giving them access to all the crown jewels, because you don't know what state they're really in. Whatever due diligence you've done on them, there's still potentially some things there, and vice versa. You can gain access to the right things for the right people really quickly. So
I've been doing mergers and acquisitions pretty much the whole of my career.
Yeah.
And it used to be you'd have a 100-day plan, and then it became a 50-day plan, and then it became a 25-day plan, and then it was like, we need integration on day one. And historically, as you said, it would be IP conflicts, having to re-IP address, it would be creating VPN connections between two firewalls and literally opening up your network to their network without, and yes, you've done due diligence, but could you fully trust it? And then that would kind of pivot a little bit, because maybe you couldn't do that, and therefore you would then deploy a VPN client on a whole bunch of devices. Sometimes those people would be sat on that internal network using your VPN tool, which basically you're bridging the networks anyway. Yeah. So really ZTNA and certainly agentless allows you to give some critical people in both sides, both companies, access to each other's companies, to access things like intranet, to access accounting information, to send people to HR, etc., on day one. And that's a significant use case. And to go back a little bit to identity, that's critical. I mean, in ZTNA, in everything we are doing, that is pivotal. Because if you don't know the identity, can you trust that you should be given any form of access?
Yeah.
Right. And I class identity as not just carbon, but like non-carbon stuff as well. So service accounts and all. You need to know all of these things.
Yeah.
To be able to build that
context.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's where was I going to go with that? I think the agent stuff's really interesting from that M&A use case. Maybe it was into identity. I think we've just seen Palo Alto and CyberArk do the deal. It feels like that's almost one of the first kind of major acknowledgements of how important identity is to a traditional network and security paradigm. Does that signal is that kind of inflection point in the industry?
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of acquisitions recently, and acquisitions tend to go in waves. I did an MBA a few years ago, and my dissertation was on acquisitions, and they go in waves. And I think on the back of the pandemic, where money seemed a little bit tight, there's more money available. We're seeing these very large acquisitions, big numbers. Yeah. I think we will see more of that. And we talked about CISOs and CIOs want consolidation, they want simplification. The market wants that as well. They want to be able to go to less vendors to buy more things to resolve their business use cases. I definitely think we'll see a lot more around identity. I think it's critical to where the market is going, as we've just discussed. I think you need to be able to build context around, I don't want to say a user, but all things, service accounts, APIs, people, devices. You need to understand that the idea of zero trust is never trust, always verify. But you need to know, to be able to verify, you need to know the context and more than just I am Jay. Like, you need to know the real details around I am Jay, this is my location, this is what I do on a daily basis, this is inside my standard parameters from this device to this application. Yeah. You need to build that level of awareness.
What does normal look like?
Yeah, what does normal look like? Then you can say this is normal, this person's allowed to continue with normal. And if it's not normal, raise a flag.
So that's a really interesting point. So I some time back had a conversation with Neil McDonald at Gartner, and he was talking around zero trust, not just in an access context. So is it appropriate for you to have access? There's also a session context, which is what you're doing with that access appropriate? So if we take an example of an IP camera talking to an S3 bucket for storage, and normal behavior for it is to be putting footage and files into that storage bucket. If that context shifts and is suddenly pulling, then it's still appropriate for it to have that access, but what it's doing has become the important thing there.
And that's where we pivot really all the way back to the conversation around AI.
Yeah.
Humans do not have the capability of going through that kind of amount of data in with speed that is required, right? So we, within our central platform, store lots of data. We're putting more and more into New Central. Therefore, we're going to have massive data lakes. We've already got one of the largest in the world anyway. To be able to go through that as a human, as a manual process, is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So being able to do AI around that and being able to look at this is normal for Jay, this is not normal, That's a perfect example. We see a lot of attacks now against IoT and OT devices because being able to segment them, being able to do all of those granular access requirements is really difficult. The market's moving towards trying to fix that, but it's difficult today. If suddenly that IP camera is doing something, I mean, I did a presentation recently about the Akira ransomware, and that happened to come in via a network-based webcam. That's one example, right? That webcam shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. That's outside of normal. Can we detect that? And being able to flag that.
So the key there, I think, in terms of the use of AI, it's about enrichment, isn't it? In terms of bringing the right things to the foreground in a sea of telemetry. It's
really about trying to find that needle in a haystack. It's going to take a normal carbon entity a long time. If we can do it much quicker, then we can react. I'm not saying we're ever going to be able to completely eradicate threats. But being able to notice them much quicker and protect an environment is critical.
Okay. And I think you, at HPE Networking, there's a great story around that kind of end-to-end visibility piece, because you've got that visibility throughout the life cycle. I mean, particularly on-prem, but even, once you've got that agent on a desktop and once you're looking at the user identity as well, then really you're starting to bring that rich context together, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, we've got Wi-Fi switches, data center switches. We've got the SASE portfolio, SSE. With the acquisition of Juniper, you can imagine how much other things we've got in our toolkit now. Being able to consolidate those together and being able to offer those as a zero trust solution really does help people with that visibility, with that control. I'm super excited for what the future holds. I'm always a positive thinker. In the back of my mind, yes, I still think about ransomware is on the rise, all of those things. But I think consolidation in the market, consolidation in products, simplification of our security designs is going to help us with protection. One of the key things that comes out of Black Hat is the conversations you have over coffee, over a drink in the evenings, over dinner, is everybody is fighting this battle and people are starting to align. It used to be, I don't care if your company is less secure than my company because I'm protected. But you mentioned supply chains before. We're no longer independent. People are breaking into a supply chain to be able to get into your business. And we saw that recently with some of our retail attacks. It wasn't supply chain, but it was they compromised.
No, but if we go back to SolarWinds and Kaseya and that things. Kind of thing.
So I'm feeling that the cybersecurity kind of environment and my peers and everybody are coming together.
It's becoming a bit more collaborative, perhaps.
And that's the only way we're going to win.
I wanted to talk about the VPN replacement stuff again. I think if you were to, for me, that's one of the ways of moving the needle most significantly for people that are on that kind of SASE and ZTNA journey. So for somebody that's starting on that journey, if they were to pick VPN replacement as that first initiative, how do they start that process from there's a business case to think about and how they get there's a reason. I think there's a number of reasons that people aren't necessarily going on that journey as quickly as we would like to see them, and I think some of that might be not necessarily understanding the technology. Sometimes it's budget, sometimes it's skill and prioritization, right?
I think there's a comfort factor as well. VPN's been around for a long time. It's been a solution that people have relied on. However, the environment we work in is significantly different than when VPN first came along. Way more people are working hybrid. It has to support much faster throughput. The security elements we have to consider. From what I'm seeing, I generally see people start with third parties and contractors. They're definitely seen as the biggest threats because of the whole not being able to or not wanting to put a client on the device. And there are a lot more third parties and contractors when you start to consider BYOD as well. So a lot of people are starting there.
So could that be the start of a kind of a proof of concept scope in terms of, hey, let's test some connectivity with a third party? And
yeah, absolutely. And quite a lot of the companies that I speak to have a different solution for their third parties and contractors anyway, because they've already considered that they are different and then maybe not on the enterprise VPN.
Yeah.
So we see people starting there with the business case. Some of our largest customers,
maybe they've got VDI there. Or they've got...
because they were... A lot of companies decided already there's a risk around putting an agent on a device that isn't yours.
Yeah.
So the solution to that is buy all the contractors and third parties a device. Put an agent on that device.
Yeah.
But then you end up with way more devices to manage. There's a cost involved in that. Contractors don't necessarily stay for long periods of time. There's a situation with trying to get those devices back, and if you do manage to get them back, having to wipe them, reinstall them, put the agent on them and ship them to the new contractor. There was a big situation in the pandemic where it was really hard to source devices.
Yeah.
So people were hiring contractors and then the contractors weren't able to work because they couldn't get devices. So there's an all element around the complexities of dealing with that and the costs. So a good business case is we don't need to buy those devices. So there's a cost saving straight away from a CapEx point of view. There's also the cost around configuration and changes that goes away. There's the speed in which you can onboard people. Within minutes you can onboard third parties and give them access. You can control what they can access, when they can access it, so you've got the security reduction as well. So we certainly see people start there, and then they get excited about what that offers. They then move on to their enterprise VPN replacement.
Yeah.
We tend to find companies want to deploy in a VPN-like scenario. And what I mean by that is giving access to subnets or VLANs or IP ranges, which kind of gives less granular access, but similar to VPN level access.
But there's got to be a starting point, because it's a journey, isn't it? We know you're not going to be perfect on day one.
Because trying to give full granular access on day one can be difficult. Not every business knows what people are doing every day. VPN gives that kind of free reign, so you might not know. So being able to give VPN-like access and evaluate what people are doing and then go more granular is a good place to start, as long as you continue to go more granular. We as in HPE went from 1,000 users in a trial to over 60,000 users on our solution within 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that included rolling out the agent, deploying it, bringing everyone on board and giving access.
Yeah.
And we've done it in such a way that we are going more and more granular as we understand. And then what we're seeing is people are moving on from ZTNA to the wider SSE, SASE and universal ZTNA.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs an SD-WAN.
No.
If you are a single site, you don't need an SD-WAN, but you do need to consider universal ZTNA because your users will be working remote and on-prem.
Yeah.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
No.
But I'm very excited that the market is shifting in that direction, and I'm very excited of what we can offer across the portfolio.
Very good. I think I'm going to use some really horrible terms now associated with ZTNA, because I just want to kind of, I think even some of the language using's been quite technical. I'm going to use a horrible word, cloudify and SASify.
Yeah, good word.
Because what we're talking about effectively is making private applications feel like a SaaS application or something that's on the cloud, right? But that's partly how we remove that friction. But again, that the business case for the reduction in friction there is not to be kind of ignored. So what I heard you say around the VPN replacement stuff is start small, and be incremental.
Take small bites of the elephant.
It's probably not a surprise of a question. How important is a partner in that journey? As a vendor, how many people are you seeing kind of self-implement, and how successful is that versus when you work with a specialist partner to kind of deliver a business outcome?
I think because the technology is still relatively new, no one's really got the experience of doing it, other than partners. You have the ability of doing this more than once. So one of the main reasons that I transitioned to the dark side to go into a vendor was because when you work for a company, you can only really do a project once.
Yeah.
And then you do it and you're done, and you don't go back and replace your VPN. You've done it.
Yeah.
And therefore you either have to train all of your staff to do something just once, and that skill is not needed again. Yes, there's an element of support maybe and maintenance and keeping it up to date, but the deployment stuff and the configuration, you really just do once.
Yeah.
I definitely used to lean on partners heavily when I ran IT, because I needed that skills. You have the ability of doing it more than once. You do it in the same vertical as I've done it in. You learn what works well. You unfortunately also learn what goes badly. And as I've said, this is relatively new, so everybody's taken that initial step.
Yeah.
It can't be expressed any better than it's really critical to have somebody that's taken the journey before.
Yeah.
Because you are replacing a tool that has been used for decades.
Oh, it's ubiquitous.
And whether, yes, it's not secure, and we've talked about all the reasons why it's not good for users and not secure, but it's known.
Yeah.
If you then go to do a deployment and you're not convinced you can do it in a way that the business is going to be happy, that makes you really, really nervous.
Yeah.
And because nobody really has the experience, it's not like you can even rely on your peers necessarily, because they probably haven't done it either.
No,
Right.
and I think as a partner, some of the stuff that we bring to the table as well is being able to engage with the business.
Yeah.
To take them on that journey. It isn't just a technology lift and shift, it's a journey to go on as a business. And especially if your business case is predicated on value beyond security posture, then there's other work to do.
Yeah.
To
And you
to
can bring
deliver
that confidence, right? You can have that conversations around, we've done this before, we've gone on this journey, we know what's worked in manufacture or within finance or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You've done those things, and like I said, I used to lean on that expertise, and you gain the knowledge of what's required.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had a very small IT team, as most companies do. Even smaller security team, you really do need that experience, and I think that's why it's critical.
Very good. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
So have I.
I'm going to press you for the latest scoop on what's going to happen with the Juniper acquisition. I don't know how much you can give us on that. It feels quite exciting because there's a lot of scope there. There's a lot of fantastic technology that you'll bring to bear.
Yeah, I'm very excited by it. I know and have experience of a lot of their tools. I can't give you the inside scoop because we're still working on exactly what it's going to look like. Certainly in the short to medium term, there's going to be no significant change for customers. Even in the long term, there'll be no significant change. But I'll keep you posted. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we've added many more tools to our toolkit. I primarily focus on the security space, and there's a lot of things that we're going to gain. I think the exciting thing is there's not a significant overlap, so it's very much additional to what we can offer. And yeah, I think it's going to be great.
Very good. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.